He has been programming since the age of 5, right? Now, I didn't start reading until the age of 16, so this is very impressive to me. He previously worked for Motorola and the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and he says he is 2 papers away from his PhD. He really should be working on them now, but please welcome Matt Duch.
Schools today are using 5, 10, 15 different systems to manage data, provide resources to students, or just help them out in general. They're generating a lot of really interesting and powerful data, but the problem is they're all in separate systems that, for the most part, don't communicate. Learnmetrics brings together all that data into one place, so teachers can get a full 360-degree view of their students. On top of that, we turn all that data in one place into actionable insights. What that means is something that directly can be acted upon by a teacher. We provide a really simple and intuitive interface for those teachers to turn those insights into a message, attach resources really easily, and send that out to parents and students. Afterwards, we can track, are those resources being used? How does that impact the trajectory? And based on that, what are the tools and resources that are really working for the students, for the schools?
That's great. Thank you, Matt. I think the reality is with Matt's tool, I would have been expelled from school far earlier than I was. So I'm glad we didn't have this when I was around. Our next speaker, who's joining the panel, is Tony Gauda, who is the CEO of ThinAir. Tony's a seasoned technologist who in previous positions built platforms which detected hundreds of millions of dollars in credit card fraud and storage systems which scaled to north of 40 petabytes. ThinAir merges both technologies into what some call the future of data protection, real-time data control. Please welcome Tony Gauda.
Good morning. So I am Tony Gauda, and actually that introduction is so good, I don't really know what else you don't know about what we do. But what I can tell you are the problems that we solve. So ThinAir is an artificial intelligence agent that's installed on an endpoint. And what we do is that we determine in real time whether there is fraud that is occurring, so someone could be taking content from that endpoint and saving it to a USB stick. What we do is we recognize those suspicious behaviors in real time and notify the data owners so that they can do things like approve whether this makes sense or not, or do photo authentication, or even voice authentication so that they can access the content in real time. But since we are the file system, we can't be circumvented. So our #1 goal is to protect the data that cannot be put out into the wild so that you don't have a $67 million breach like one of our retailers did last year, and then your shareholders are wondering what happened. That's what we do. We protect data.
Very good. That almost looks like John Travolta is sneaking up behind us. Is that who
That is actually who that is.
It is John Travolta.
No, it's not.
All right, Andrew Hubbs, co-founder of Parklet and the CTO as well. He oversees product and software development on the Parklet platform. Founded in 2012, Parklet helps businesses around the world engage, grow, and retain their workforces. Prior to Parklet, Andrew led engineering efforts at Rally.org. Please welcome Andrew Hubbs.
Hi, I'm Andrew. So we built Parklet to reconnect the employer and the employee. So with Parklet, you can manage your employees from their first day to their last. So we make it very easy to streamline processes like onboarding and termination, as well as provide tools to help engage your employees and improve retention. If you'd like to know more, come find me.
Very good, very succinct. Andrew is helping me look for a new job backstage. Connor Landgraf is a graduate of UC Berkeley and the founder and CEO of Echo Devices. founded Echo Devices while still an undergraduate studying bioengineering at Cal, where he also served as the student body president. Before starting Echo, he had 6 years of software development experience, and he's currently pursuing a graduate degree in engineering at Cal. Please welcome Connor Landgraf.
Good morning, everyone. I want to tell you something a little bit shocking. That is that 80% of new primary care physicians cannot accurately diagnose common heart conditions with an analog stethoscope. So what that means to you is that most of the time when you go to the doctor and they put that cold piece of metal on your chest, they're not really getting anything out of that. Shocking, right? Fundamentally, it's just really challenging to hear the minute differences between heart sounds. It takes years and years of training, and primary care physicians right now don't have enough training to do that. So at Echo, we're building the world's most intelligent stethoscope. We built a hardware component that fits onto analog stethoscopes and allows physicians to automatically analyze those heart sounds and really get real-time decision support to help them better diagnose heart conditions for their patients at lower costs and with better outcomes. Thanks.
Very good. All right. So I actually did try to get Connor to test me back there to see if I'm okay, but he wouldn't do it. Maybe later on we'll do that. I want to ask you all about where the ideas came from. How did you envision the opportunity, and then how did you pursue it? Let's start down at the end. Matt, how did you?
So this was actually my co-founder's idea. He was an educator for 4 years. And basically what he found was all this data was there, you just had to put it together in order to make it useful. So he would stay late till 9 or 10 every night, building spreadsheets, compiling all the information you could find. We sent something like 80 or 90% of the students off to excellent colleges. The problem was he burned out after 4 years. So Learnmetrics was his vision of what would have kept them in the classroom, what was missing in that space.
So when you looked at that map, in the past, that sounds like it would have been a very difficult challenge of integrating all that information. What in the technology landscape allowed you to approach that differently? I'm looking at that from sort of lessons learned from folks in the room. How did you use new technologies available to tackle kind of old problems?
So, I mean, this company literally would not have been possible 5 years ago. There's been a huge push lately, especially in the education space, toward open APIs, interoperability, that make an application like this, a third-party analytics system, possible. So, I mean, that's just been a revolutionary change over the last couple of years.
Yeah. Same question, Tom.
Yeah, so, in my previous life, earlier we talked about I designed fraud prediction systems at MasterCard. Shortly after that, I designed a storage system that scaled to, multiple petabytes. So, in looking at the news and starting to see all the breaches that have occurred, you start to notice one common thread that occurred, and that there was some credential compromise that occurred. So some individual impersonates some person, compromises an endpoint, and then uses that as a staging point for the attacks. Now, the problem is that we trust credentials. We think that whoever enters that information, that validates who that actual user is. Well, imagine a world where the device itself understands the context of the access request, but also does continuous authentication of the user to determine in real time if they are who they say they are. That's what we've developed, is technology that determines in real time if this person that says that they are an IT administrator really is. And because of that, we can either stop them from accessing the content so that it doesn't actually become a compromise, or alert others so that they can validate that this is the correct person. And this is, I think the reason why this came about was just because of the unique perspective that I had, being in fraud prediction and jumping into storage and seeing that this is the perfect vector for us to have enough information to determine, is this the right person?
So, and the same question I asked Matt, which is, how are the new technology landscape allowing you to attack this problem in ways maybe you couldn't have before?
It's just us getting better at behavioral analytics. So us having enough information about users and understanding things that typical people do in their day. They don't usually take the person identifiable information and copy it to a USB stick. So we now have enough data and enough historical data for us to determine in real time things that are fraudulent and things that are actual user behaviors throughout the remote gig. So I think that our ability to kind of process this information and make decisions in real time is what we couldn't do 5 years ago.
Right.
Cool. Yeah, so Parklet really came about because my co-founder and I kind of looked at the way we go to work, and we feel like our jobs are an ingrained part of who we are, and that we really identify with that. But that we felt disconnected from the employer. And that seems like a big mistake when I'm spending a huge amount of my time at this role, and that it's a big part of who I am, but I don't feel like I'm connected with the values and the mission of the organization. And we've seen this trend of, especially millennials, spending less and less time at a given company,
Right.
and you're no longer the company man kind of thing. And we wanted to say, well, why is that? Because most of these organizations set out to be mission-driven, have core values that should identify with their employees, but there's a disconnect somewhere in that communication. So Parklet kind of sprung out of that, of how do we reconnect an employee to the employer?
Right. And again, that question of how are you capitalizing on technology changes that maybe make this possible when it wasn't possible before?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the biggest things that I think have made it much more easy to communicate the kind of message as a company now is the fact that people are always connected to their device, and it's much easier to pull technology and data from third-party services. So basically the fact that you can tie all that together into a succinct message wasn't really possible until recently, and delivering it at any time to any of your employees is definitely an emerging trend.
That's great. Connor?
I think rather than a technology shift for us, it was the markets and the medical system realizing that smartphones and mobile computing could be so powerful. And I think there's still a lot of reluctance in the industry to accept that your iPhone and your tablet can actually be medical devices. And I think, like I said, rather than technology, it's attitudes. And the medical industry is really starting to make that shift. And I think that's been driven in part because of the vast consumer adoption of wearables and the vast amounts of data that you can now gather from that.
Right.
And the healthcare system is realizing there's a lot of valuable information there. We need to start using some of the same technology.
So you have a shared wisdom. Essentially, the learnings of lots of people are made available to people who may not have the skill set to make these diagnoses on their own. How open was are people to this? How trusting are they of that information?
I think 4 years ago, we would have never been able to succeed.
Right.
But I think now we're really seeing that hospitals are super excited about these new technologies. They're, 4 years ago, they would have been totally way too risky to try them out. But now they're realizing that there's a lot of data that they can get and there's a lot of value that they can get, and they're willing to take a small risk to try them out in pilots and to try them out in beta tests to see how that works in their setting.
Makes sense. So you're all innovators, you're all entrepreneurs, and I think people are all within IT or within line of business trying to figure out how to be more entrepreneurial, how to generate more ideas and see them to fruition. What advice do you have, based on all of the work that you've put into this, what's critical toward A, clearly identifying problems, and B, getting the solution out there and really delivering on that solution? I'll throw that open, anyone can jump in on that.
Cool. So I would say that the best ways I see for IT departments to push their organizations forward is really to listen to their employees. Basically, you already have your employees going out looking for better ways to do their jobs, and the IT department really has to make those technologies that are found fit into the organization. And so I think some of that is communicating the actual role and concerns of an IT department, and some of that is empowering your employees by being forward-thinking with things like how you can use your device, and perhaps using technology like ThinAir to mitigate that pulling and going of data that is one of those core concerns before it happens.
So make that concrete for me. How did you talk to HR people? Did you talk to employees? Who were the key shapers of your product?
So our product was driven largely by HR and IT departments, as well as individual employee kind of input and how they felt. So we've done things like look at data around retention and why employees leave companies, and we talked with IT departments about how things fall through the cracks in processes like onboarding, and kind of together kind of form that into what Parklet is the core of.
Great.
With our solution, one of the things that we thought really hard about was, you can make something as secure as
as you really need it to be. The problem is that will your users actually use that security solution? Because security as a whole, if you erect these massive barriers, then no one's going to use it. So one of the things we thought really hard about, that's actually the thesis behind the name of the company, which is ThinAir, is that it's completely behind the scenes, is that you don't notice that it's there until there's a problem, and that's when you want to notice that it's there. So it was really us noticing just normal consumer behavior and them being spoiled with their iPhones when it does what they, when I tell my phone to do something, it just does what I expect it to do.
Right.
That's the same thing I want to have in the IT, organization. When I want to open a document, I want it to, open. I don't want to have to be prompted with a password. So those are the types of problems that we thought really hard about solving.
At Echo, we actually, we had a really unique situation in which we were able to kind of realize what customers wanted. And that was that when we first started, we thought, let's build this thing that plugs into a smartphone and doesn't really look anything like a normal stethoscope. And we went to physicians and we said, would you purchase this? And they said, hell no. And we asked them why. And they said, because it doesn't look like a stethoscope. And that was a huge aha moment for us. We were like, the stethoscope means something because of its form. And it's very, it's an important tool for the aura of the physician. And so we went back to the drawing board and we said, how can we actually build a device that doesn't change that form factor? And so I think understanding that consumers really like the form factors that they already have, and you have to be able to innovate within that box, so to say.
I mean, for us, I think it was really interesting as we went through the process of working with different schools to discover how different the needs were, and that you couldn't build one solution that would get everyone on board. So really what we've been working on is identifying the different kind of building blocks, Lego pieces if you want to think about it that way, that different schools need, and then letting them combine it however they want. So if they're struggling with 8th grade math, then you're going to design metrics and feedback based on that specific driver, rather than everyone has measures of attendance, everyone has measures of what your average score in class is. Working with the individuals at their different problems that really leads them to the solutions.
So I want to get your take on how do you make innovation happen? Because you all had ideas, and as a previous boss of mine said, ideas are cheap. Everyone has them, right? Very motivational stuff. I want to talk because we see in a lot of instances where people want the best intentions around innovating, best intentions around changing processes. How do you make it happen? How have you been able to go from the idea to actually delivering something? What are the keys to that?
Definitely understanding the space you're working in. So even if you think you may have a really good idea for how you can help out, but in either education, healthcare, all that, I think it's really important to have a background in it,
right.
So you can more easily communicate with the people you're trying to reach. Because it's really easy to come in with this great new application that nobody really wants to use. You need to be able to talk with and frame the solution as something that is actually really needed by the people who are going to use it.
Right.
And to add on to that point, one of the things that you really want to do is make sure that your messaging is succinct and very clear, so that because most of the time, most people have issues and they're always looking for ways to solve the problems that they have. The problem is that most products just don't sound like they solve the problems that people are looking to solve. So what's really important is to make sure that the marketing message that you're telling the consumers or the enterprise aligns with the people that are looking for the solution. That's a critical. I mean, you can have the greatest product in the world, but if no one clearly understands what it is, it literally doesn't matter.
Yeah, I guess, Tony, what I'm asking is really more around within your team, what are the critical things to making sure that this thing actually came to fruition?
So execution versus the ideation? Yeah. So
ideation, one of my least favorite words. Thank you for bringing it up.
Yeah. It's really communicating with the customer base that you're building the product for. So making sure that you're building the product that actually makes sense, but also making sure the team doesn't deviate from what the consumers need. Because we have a general understanding of what we think we're going to build, and usually by the time you're done, it's something totally different because you've got additional feedback, you've run into problems that cause it to, the people love stethoscopes instead of phones around their necks, right? I mean, all these different types of things that that you didn't know about, that you learn over time.
Right.
I mean, I would say probably three things. You need to listen to your customers, then you need to read between the lines, and then it's just hard work. So that's pretty much it.
Yeah, Connor?
I think it's the most important thing to be innovative is to eliminate your own groupthink. Because I think as entrepreneurs, we kind of self-sustain our ideas, and then once you and your team start to work on an idea, you just kind of fuel your own fire in terms of what you think your assumptions are and what you think your product should be. And so if you can find ways to eliminate the groupthink within your organization so you don't build the wrong product, you don't build things that people don't want.
So we're running out of time, but I want to try to get two questions from you. One is this issue of, we just heard it on the venture panel. If you're in IT, you're hearing from a lot of people, or almost any part of the business now, you're hearing about a lot of technology solutions. So I'd love to know, even quickly, is how are you going to cut through and get that customer attention and get them to buy into what you're selling? But then I also want you to think about, as you look at the tech landscape going forward, what kinds of changes do you see coming that you think you can capitalize on, and maybe other folks can capitalize on? Are there things going on in social, mobile analytics, cloud, big data that you think create additional opportunities? But maybe we just go down the line starting with you, Matt. How are you going to cut through the clutter and get people to listen to your great idea about a product?
So I mean, in our case, it really was just that we, on our team, had the experience of how do you talk to educators? And all of a sudden, when you go to them with this knowledge in hand, I mean, you can frame the conversation in a way that they don't tune out in the first couple sentences, that you get their attention right there. And the key thing is to just underline exactly how it's going to make your life easier, not more complex. I mean, you don't want to add necessarily more features. You want to take away a pain point or save them time and make it clear right up front what that looks like.
Right.
And I think that was the key in getting really good conversations going with some of our partners.
Yeah, and I imagine it's certainly education is not an environment where people have stacks of cash laying around and they're waiting to spend on things. So that's going to add an additional layer of complexity to that.
I mean, it does. There's a lot of movements, though, that people all over the country are trying different things when it comes to education. A lot of schools now have a principal that has a little bit more freedom in just discretionary spending, so they can try something new for a year.
Yeah.
And if you're willing to convince them that you're the idea to try for that year, it becomes a lot easier.
Great. Tony, how are you going to cut through the clutter?
For us, it's just, building an amazing product. So, I've worked in IT in the past. I know that my friends recommend great products. So what we do is we make sure that we solve the problem that we tell people that we can solve, and they tell others. So we've been very fortunate that people have been very excited about the product. We've got very large verticals that are deploying us throughout the world. So from our perspective, it's just delivering on our message.
Makes sense, Andrew?
I would say the last thing another IT department wants is another product. So what you sell them is a solution to a problem.
Right.
And from there, it's knowing that it doesn't end at the signing of the sale. It's all about the implementation. And from there, it should just be referrals. If you did your job right, you're going to get customers through your current customers.
Come.
I think you just need to make your products seamless. They need to fit within the existing structures that the IT department has or a hospital has or whatever it is. And they need to fit within that and not create other edges.
So it's speed round question because we only have a minute left. What's coming up in the technology environment that you're excited about because you think you can capitalize on? What kinds of changes are happening?
So as I mentioned, we're getting there, but just the open APIs everywhere, the systems can easily communicate with each other is just going to open up a lot of possibilities.
That makes perfect sense, yeah.
For us, it's distributed workforces and BYOD. I mean, so, people want to work where they are comfortable, and we want to make sure that wherever they are, their data is secure.
Great.
I have to pretty much just agree with Tony on that one. It's all about, we're in the infant age of mobile still, so that's what's coming.
A lot of untapped opportunity there.
I think applying big data to your prediction can help people predict what the next product that they're going to want to buy is, or the next software that they're going to use is.
Very good. Matt, Tony, Andrew, Connor, the demo gods, your demo gods.